welcome to the Room of Requirement. Today's video is entitled The Hidden Structure of Human Suffering and Why Pain Leads to Awakening. Let's go ahead and dive in. Okay. Suffering. Human beings spend most of their lives trying to escape suffering. We distract ourselves from it, suppress it, intellectualize it, medicate it, spiritualize it, or attempt to outrun it entirely. And yet, no matter how much modern life tries to remove discomfort, suffering remains one of the most unavoidable aspects of human existence. Loss, grief, uncertainty, fear, heartbreak, loneliness, emptiness, confusion, disappointment. Every person encounters these in some form. But what if suffering is not merely an unfortunate condition of life? What if it serves a deeper purpose? What if the very thing we spend our lives trying to escape is also one of the primary gateways through which illumination, transformation, and awakening become possible? Why we resist suffering. The mind naturally moves away from discomfort. It seeks stability, certainty, pleasure, and control. This is not weakness, it is survival. The separate self is structured around preservation, and suffering threatens the structures through which identity maintains itself. Pain interrupts the illusion that life can be permanently controlled. It exposes vulnerability, impermanence, limitation, and uncertainty. And because of this, most people experience suffering not only as pain itself, but as resistance to pain. And this is important to understand. Much of human suffering is not created by pain alone. It is created by the refusal to fully encounter what pain is revealing. One of the deepest teachings found across mystery traditions, mystery schools, contemplative systems, and esoteric philosophy is that suffering is not meaningless. It is not always punishment, nor simply random misfortune. Very often, suffering functions as interruption. It disrupts unconsciousness. It breaks patterns that would otherwise continue indefinitely. It exposes attachments, illusions, dependencies, and identities that remain invisible while life is comfortable. Without friction, most people never question the structures they live within. Without loss, many never discover what cannot actually be lost. Without suffering, the separate self often remains unquestioned. This is the paradox at the center of transformation. Suffering is the very thing most people want removed from their lives, yet it is often suffering that cracks open the structures preventing deeper awareness from emerging. Throughout history, countless mystics, philosophers, initiates, and contemplatives have pointed towards the same realization in different language. The alchemists describe it as calcination and purification. Mystical Christianity described it as dying to the false self. Buddhism speaks of suffering as the catalyst for awakening. Hermetic systems speak of descent before ascent. The mystery traditions repeatedly point towards the same hidden pattern, that illumination often emerges through confrontation with limitation rather than avoidance of it. Comfort is not wrong, but uninterrupted comfort rarely forces self-confrontation. When everything externally supports the current identity structure, there is little reason to question it. The separate self continues functioning through repetition, distraction, validation, stimulation, and external pursuit. But suffering interrupts momentum. It creates pauses that cannot easily be ignored. Suddenly, the questions deepen. Who am I beneath what I lost? What remains when what defined me collapses? Why do I feel empty even when I obtain what I thought I wanted? These questions rarely emerge from a comfort alone. Modern society has become extraordinarily skilled at avoiding pain. Endless entertainment, stimulation, noise, consumption, social validation, productivity, and distraction create an environment where stillness itself becomes uncomfortable. The moment discomfort appears, attention immediately moves away from it, but this constant avoidance creates a deeper form of suffering beneath the surface. creates a quiet emptiness, fragmentation, and disconnection that many people cannot fully explain. Because what is avoided externally remains unresolved internally, and what remains unresolved continues shaping perception unconsciously. For many people, spirituality begins when ordinary methods of escape stop working. The things that once distracted no longer satisfy. Achievement no longer resolves the emptiness. Relationships no longer fully complete the longing. The separate self begins exhausting itself through repetition, and eventually suffering becomes too visible to ignore. And this is often where the spiritual path begins. Not because suffering itself is sacred in isolation, but because suffering interrupts the illusion that external conditions alone can resolve internal separation. At this stage, many people begin searching beyond surface-level explanations. Religion may no longer feel deep enough. Psychology may explain mechanisms without fully resolving meaning. And material success may no longer answer the deeper longing underneath experience. This is where the occult, the mystical, and the esoteric traditions begin calling to people, not because they promise escape from suffering, but because they frame suffering differently. They suggest that pain is not merely something to eliminate, it is something to understand, something that reveals, and something that transforms. In the ancient world, suffering was often understood initiatically. The descent into darkness, uncertainty, loss, or fragmentation was not seen as failure alone, but as part of transformation. And nearly every initiation myth across cultures continues this pattern. Descent, confrontation, dissolution, and return. The underworld is journey, the dark night, the crossing of the abyss, the death before rebirth. Why? Because something false must often break down before something deeper can emerge consciously. And this is why periods of suffering often feel like disorientation. The old structure is collapsing, but the deeper structure is not fully stabilized yet. Suffering reveals attachment. It reveals fear. It reveals dependency. It reveals the identities we unconsciously cling to in order to feel stable. It exposes where worth was externally located, where control was assumed, where illusion was mistaken for permanence. But hidden inside this exposure is also revelation. Because once these structures become visible, they can no longer operate unconsciously in the same way, and this is where awareness begins. One of the deepest realizations on the path is that illumination is not found by escaping the darkness, but by moving consciously through it. This does not mean glorifying suffering or seeking pain unnecessarily. It means recognizing that within suffering there is often hidden knowledge about the self, about attachment, about reality, and about what remains when illusion begins dissolving. The light is not found outside suffering. The light is often revealed within it, because suffering strips away distraction long enough for deeper truth to become visible. At a certain point, something begins to shift. The suffering may still exist externally, but your relationship to it changes. Instead of immediately resisting the pain, escaping it, or identifying entirely with it, there is space around it. Observation begins replacing total immersion, and meaning begins emerging from what once felt meaningless. And this changes everything, because suffering stops being experienced purely as punishment and begins becoming part of your awakening. Most people never reach this point because the instinct to escape suffering is extremely strong, and modern life continuously supports avoidance. The moment discomfort appears, distraction is available. The process is interrupted before suffering has time to reveal what lies beneath it. This is not weakness, it's conditioning, but it also means many people spend their entire lives avoiding the very doorway through which deeper transformation would have emerged. As suffering is consciously moved through rather than constantly resisted, something deeper begins stabilizing. Compassion deepens, humility deepens, presence deepens, the need to control everything weakens, and the illusion of separateness begins softening. And eventually, many begin recognizing that the deepest forms of suffering were not meaningless interruptions to life, but catalysts that forced them into deeper contact with themselves. And many people eventually realize the pain did not destroy them, it revealed them. If suffering has brought you to this path, if pain has forced you to question reality more deeply, if loss cracked open structures you once depended on, that does not mean something went wrong. It may mean something deeper was trying to emerge through the collapse of what could no longer hold you. Suffering is not the end of the path. Very often it is the threshold through which the path truly begins. At a certain point, you begin to realize that suffering was never simply an interruption to life, but part of the process through which deeper awareness becomes possible. And while the instinct is always to escape pain as quickly as possible, the deeper truth is that some of the most transformative moments in human life emerge precisely through what breaks us open. The suffering itself is not the illumination, but it often creates the conditions where illusion weakens, where the separate self begins to loosen, and where something deeper can finally be seen clearly. And while no one would consciously choose many of the painful experiences that shape them, countless people eventually realize that what once felt like destruction was also the beginning of profound transformation, because within the suffering they encountered not only pain, but the first real glimpse of what remains when everything false begins to fall away. Okay, you guys, this is all I have for you on this. Suffering is kind of a necessary thing that we have to go through because we have to experience contrast. If we were happy all the time, we wouldn't grow. So even though, we're not supposed to go out and seek this, even though we do it unconsciously or subconsciously, there is magic, there is gold in the moments of suffering if you can just kind of expand your awareness long enough to realize that there is a lesson there. There is something there that your soul is trying to show you. It's trying to illuminate, shed light on something in particular in your life. And I know that's hard to wrap your mind around when something is so potent and intense and horrible and heart-wrenching. But there is always something there that you are supposed to get something out of. So I hope this helps you guys understand suffering and the role that it will play on your spiritual path eventually. If you keep doing this and get deeper, you will at some point have to experience the pain, the emotional trauma, all of the things that you've been avoiding, because all they are is a blockade, an obstacle in your way to keep you from being the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. Okay, you guys, that's all I have for you. I will see you guys soon. Bye.